Hello WEL, come back for today's point about aerospace industrial best practice of USA, EU, China, Japan, or Korea for Africa 2027 to 2037. If by aerospace industrial best practice you mean what Africa should learn from the USA, EU, China, Japan and South Korea to build a competitive aerospace industry during 2027 to 2037, I would not copy one country. The strongest African model would be a hybrid. U.S. industrial resilience plus EU cooperation plus Chinese supply chain localization plus Japanese quality/MRO plus Korean commercialization and export discipline. The timing is favorable. The U.S. is explicitly rebuilding a resilient defense industrial ecosystem. The EU has an industrial strategy running toward 2035. China is accelerating commercial space and integrated aerospace supply chains. Japan is strengthening aircraft/defense supply chains and integration. And Korea is pursuing a private sector-led aerospace ecosystem and large satellite/space industrial clusters. 1. The 5 models and what Africa should take. Model: USA, EU, NA, Japan, South Korea. EA best practice: government plus private industry plus universities, resilient supply chains, long-term procurement, dual-use technology, multinational industrial cooperation, common standards, shared R&D, strategic autonomy, complete domestic supply chains, industrial parks, rapid scale, government as anchor, customer precision manufacturing, quality, supplier discipline, reliability, MRO and international partnerships, government industry coordination plus commercial scale plus exports plus technology localization. What Africa should adopt: industrial base governance, R&D funding, anchor government procurement, supply chain mapping, African multinational aerospace programs, common standards, pooled procurement, local supplier development, aerospace clusters, mass production, infrastructure first approach, quality systems, advanced manufacturing, supplier certification, MRO excellence, export-oriented industrial policy, technology transfer, private champions, aerospace clusters. What Africa should avoid: copying extremely expensive high-end platforms before building basic industrial depth. Fragmentation between many national programs, excessive state direction and dependence on government-owned champions trying to develop every technology domestically, building national champions without sufficient regional market demand. The Korean lesson is particularly relevant. Korea's current aerospace strategy combines private sector leadership, satellite manufacturing, supply chain localization, industrial clusters, government purchasing and international partnerships. Its 2026 strategy targets a large LEO satellite communications network by 2035 and explicitly emphasizes mass production systems and domestic component supply chains. That is highly transferable to Africa. To the African model, I would recommend Aerospace 2037. Rather than trying to build an African Boeing, Airbus, SpaceX, or Lockheed Martin immediately, Africa should build an integrated aerospace industrial ecosystem. 6 industrial pillars. 1. Aviation MRO. Start here. Aircraft maintenance, engine maintenance, component repair, avionics, landing gear, composite repair, aircraft interiors, ground support equipment. Africa spends enormous amounts maintaining aircraft overseas. Keeping progressively more of this value inside Africa creates immediate industrial capability. ICAO's recent AFI work continues to emphasize aviation safety, security, sustainability, and connectivity as priorities for African aviation. 2. Aerospace components. Move from MRO into manufacturing. Wiring harnesses, machined parts, brackets, fasteners, composite panels, seats/interiors, hydraulic components, electrical systems, sensors, ground systems. This is the Japanese/Korean lesson: don't jump directly to complete aircraft. Build thousands of qualified suppliers first. 3. UAV/drone industry. This could become Africa's fastest aerospace manufacturing sector. Applications: agriculture, mapping, infrastructure inspection, disaster response, environmental monitoring, logistics, border surveillance, emergency communications. Start with civilian and dual-use systems, creating manufacturing competence before attempting sophisticated military platforms. 4. Satellite industry. Africa should move beyond buying satellite imagery. Develop satellite data, rightward arrow, ground stations, rightward arrow, applications, rightward arrow, satellite assembly, rightward arrow, payloads, rightward arrow, components. The first objective should be satellite applications, not launch vehicles. Agriculture, water, mining, climate monitoring, logistics, telecommunications, and disaster management provide the domestic market. 5. Regional aircraft. Only later should Africa pursue aircraft integration. A realistic 2030s target would be utility aircraft, regional turboprops, light aircraft, special mission aircraft, helicopters, cargo aircraft, eventually regional passenger aircraft. The aircraft should be an African industrial program using international partners, not an attempt to invent every component domestically. 6. Space transportation launch capability should be a 2032 to 2037 objective, not the starting point. First build. Satellite rightward arrow, ground station rightward arrow, payload rightward arrow, spacecraft assembly rightward arrow, testing rightward arrow, launch services rightward arrow, eventually launch vehicle. China's current commercial space approach illustrates the importance of developing the entire chain: launch vehicles, satellites, launch infrastructure, tracking/control and applications, rather than treating a rocket as an isolated project. 3. The most important lesson: build the industrial base, not just aerospace projects. This is where the U.S. model is extremely valuable. The U.S. National Defense Industrial Strategy identifies resilience of the industrial ecosystem as a strategic objective rather than simply buying more weapons. For Africa, establish an African Aerospace Industrial Base AAIB with a continental database of companies' capabilities, machines, engineers, materials, certifications, testing facilities, universities, research laboratories, MRO capacity, aerospace exports, aerospace imports, critical supply chain dependencies. Every African country should know, what aerospace component can we competitively manufacture? Rather than simply asking, what aircraft can we build? 4. Africa needs an Airbus-like cooperation model. This is where the EU model is particularly useful. Europe's defense industrial strategy seeks stronger collaboration, investment, industrial responsiveness, and partnerships, with a vision extending to 2035. Africa could create something analogous. African Aerospace Consortium AAC. Potential members: African Union AFCFTA of COC, African Space Agency, National Aerospace Agencies, airlines, universities, development banks, private aerospace companies. The principle: 1. African market, multiple specialized industrial centers. For example, Region East Africa, possible specialization: satellites, UAVs, avionics, MRO. Southern Africa, advanced manufacturing, space systems, composites. North Africa, aircraft structures, engine/MRO, avionics. West Africa, aircraft components, UAVs, MRO, materials. Central Africa, materials, mining-related aerospace applications, logistics. These are strategic possibilities, not fixed assignments. Actual specialization should follow skills, infrastructure, investment, and market studies. 5. 2027 to 2037 Roadmap. Phase I, 2027 to 2029, Foundation. Goal: create the industrial architecture. Priority projects: 1. African Aerospace Industrial Strategy. 2. Continental Aerospace Supplier Database. 3. Common Aerospace Standards. 4. Regional Certification Centers. 5. Aerospace Engineering Universities Network. 6. MRO Centers. 7. UAV Industrial Clusters. 8. Satellite Data Companies. 9. Aerospace Financing Mechanism. 10. Government Procurement Framework. Target: by 2029, Africa should have hundreds of certified aerospace suppliers, rather than a handful of spectacular aerospace projects. Phase 2, 2030 to 2032, Industrialization, move from maintenance to manufacturing. Programs: African MRO Network, African UAV Program, African Small Satellite Program, African Aerospace Components Program, African Avionics Program, African Aerospace Materials Program. Government and airlines should provide anchor demand. This is a major U.S/Korean lesson: industry cannot become globally competitive if government and major customers never purchase from it. Phase 3, 2033 to 2035, Integration. Now Africa should begin integrating larger systems. Examples: African surveillance aircraft, regional cargo aircraft, utility aircraft, advanced UAVs, satellite constellations, space ground networks, aircraft engines/components, advanced composites, aerospace electronics. Japan's current industrial policy work is particularly relevant here because it emphasizes international joint development, supplier modernization, testing infrastructure, MRO, and integration capability. Phase 4, 2036 to 2037, Global competitiveness. The objective should no longer be merely made in Africa, it should become designed, certified, and exported from Africa. Possible exports: MRO services, aircraft components, UAVs, satellite components, satellite data, avionics, composites, aerospace software, training, engineering services, launch services. 6. What Africa should copy most from each country. I would rank the transferable lessons like this. USA Industrial Ecosystem 9.5/10 Learn, Government Procurement plus Private Capital plus Universities plus R&D plus Resilient Suppliers. EU Regional Integration 10/10. Learn. Multiple countries sharing one aerospace industrial program. This may be the single most important lesson for Africa. China Scale 9/10 Learn, Industrial Parks plus Infrastructure plus Supply Chain Localization plus Rapid Production Scaling. China's commercial aerospace policy explicitly emphasizes coordinated development across the industrial chain and international expansion. Japan Quality 10/10. Learn, Precision plus Reliability plus Supplier Discipline plus Continuous Improvement plus Certification. Korea Commercialization 10/10 Lear. N. Government Industry Partnership Rightward Aero Technology Localization Rightward Aero Production Rightward Aero Exports. Korea's aerospace policy also shows the importance of transferring publicly developed technologies into private sector commercialization. Its recent NURI program explicitly used private production leadership as part of this transition. 7. What AFRI CA should not do this is perhaps more important. Don't start with a fighter aircraft. Don't build a rocket factory before building satellite demand. Don't create 20 small national aerospace agencies doing the same thing. Don't measure success by number of MAUs. Don't buy foreign aircraft and call it an aerospace industry. Don't establish aerospace parks without anchor companies. Don't train engineers without creating industrial jobs. Don't demand 100% local content immediately. Instead use 20% rightward arrow, 35% rightward arrow, 50% rightward arrow, 70% local value addition over time, with internationally competitive certification. 8. The Finan Sing Architecture. A serious 2027 to 2037 program needs a dedicated financial system. I would establish African Aerospace Development Fund AADF with capital from African Development Bank, National Development Banks, pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, private equity, strategic foreign investors, export credit agencies, off-the-linked investment mechanisms. Financing should be divided into R&D grants, rightward arrow, prototype finance, rightward arrow, industrialization loans, rightward arrow, export finance, rightward arrow, working capital. This mirrors an important lesson from both the US and Korea. Aerospace companies need patient capital and predictable demand, not just startup grants. Korea, for example, has used substantial government financing and industrial support alongside its aerospace export ambitions. 9. A realistic 2037 target. I would establish measurable continental KPIs such as KPI certified aerospace suppliers, major regional MRO centers, aerospace engineering centers. 2037 ambition: 500 plus 10 to 15 20 plus aerospace technicians / engineers trained, 100,000 plus African satellite manufacturing established at scale, UAV manufacturing, aerospace exports, major aerospace industrial clusters, regional aircraft program. Globally competitive niches, multi-billion-dollar sector. 5 to 8 operational African aerospace certification ecosystem, mature space / Earth observation applications, continental scale. The exact numerical targets should ultimately be validated by a detailed African market and capacity study. The important point is to create measurable industrial KPIs rather than political slogans. 10. My recommended formula. If I had to reduce the entire strategy to one equation: Africa 2037 aerospace equals USA industrial resilience plus EU continental cooperation plus China supply chain scale plus Japan quality plus Korea commercialization plus African market / resources / talent. And the sequence should be: MRO rightward arrow components, rightward arrow UAVs, rightward arrow satellites, rightward arrow avionics, rightward arrow advanced materials, rightward arrow aircraft integration, rightward arrow space systems, rightward arrow launch capability. That is much more realistic than trying to reproduce the US aerospace industry from scratch. The strongest strategic opportunity is actually not one African aerospace company, it is an African aerospace industrial network in which Ethiopia, South Africa, Egypt, Morocco, Nigeria, Kenya, Rwanda, and other countries specialize in different portions of the value chain and sell into the AFCFTA market and eventually the global market. Thank you. See you soon.